Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we have a very special guest, but before we get to that, I just want to plug my workshop, Embodied Shadow. We did it live last week. The replay is still available if you want to catch the replay. It was so good. I really took a couple special interests and infused it into this, hour-long workshop where I connect things like nervous system regulation to shadow work and understanding how the body plays a role in the expression of your unconscious mind. I'll leave the link in the show notes. I feel like this workshop is great for anybody who wants to understand better the connection between their body and shadow work. If there's been any kind of body trauma in your past or you identify as neurodivergent. And this is because if you've had any body trauma or you have neurodivergence, it's sometimes more difficult to stay present in the body. And we touch on that a lot in this episode with this interview. I had a chance to interview Priestess Cinda Starr. We had such a good conversation. It was so tough editing this conversation down into something that was under an hour because we talked for much longer. The conversation was amazing. I really enjoyed getting to know Priestess Cinda. She has such a fascinating story. And I really hope that this conversation just opens up some hearts and minds to the healing potential of BDSM. And not just the healing potential, but the spiritual potential that's behind the practices. And stay tuned because I'm definitely seeing her in person and letting her tie me, which I'm very excited for. Anyways, here's the interview. Make sure to give her a follow. I put all of her info also in the show notes. All right, on to the conversation. Enjoy. How do you describe what you do?
If vanilla people ask, I am a somatic wellness practitioner. To everyone else, I am a dominatrix, among other things that I do. But today, specifically, in the case of what we're talking about, yes, I am a dominatrix.
Tell me about your background and just how you grew up. I know that you said that your parents were in the lifestyle, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I would just love to hear about your foundation of your life, basically. We're going deep right away.
awesome. I love it. Let's go. Let's go there. So I am very blessed and fortunate to have the background that I did in BDSM. My mom was very much herself around her kids and was raised Catholic and left the church, found her own practice and everything. And as a kid, she started getting into paganism, and that kind of spark to going down our actual lineage and where we come from and everything and where our magic comes from. So as a kid, she's like, you don't have to practice this. I don't do this anymore. This is what I do now. I don't want to push or force you to do anything. You can believe in or practice whatever you like as long as it does not harm you or anybody else. And my initial reaction was, magic is real? That was the only takeaway that I got from that. I'm like, my mom's a witch and magic is real. Life changed.
Oh my God, I love that. Oh, every little girl's dream.
Yeah, it just confirmed what I already knew. I was raised by goth parents. Like my mom is goth, and my stepdad is a drummer for a metal band. So we grew up in that very alternative lifestyle, anyways. And as I got older, they were who they were. They would host parties, and I would see floggers and just toys and stuff. And my mom was one of those people who's like, if you want to know, ask and I'll give you an honest answer, but make sure you really want to know the answer before you ask. And so I knew about the lifestyle from my mom's perspective, and she really drilled into my head informed consent protocol, safe words, stuff like that. She's, you need to know the basics, the safety protocol before you even touch a toy or get into a dynamic. I mean, being the asshole kid that I am, I still had to fuck around and find out for myself, but
Of
I
course.
did still take away a lot from my mom.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah.
what I would wonder is how did that inform your early sex life? Having all of this knowledge, because I know a lot of people they're going into their teenage years or whatever blind. Like they're
Mhm.
going at it without any foundation at all. Yet you had this kind of very open, cool dynamic where your parents were open with you. Like, how do you think that
Yeah.
affected your sex life?
I definitely was a lot more knowledgeable about things than the people I was dating. And I feel like to a certain extent I put a certain expectation on my partners that I don't think that they were prepared for, and I didn't really think that I knew what I was more or less getting into, because this all these things excited me and interested me, but being so young, I didn't have any of the experience yet. So a lot of young mistakes made. I spent a lot of time as a submissive or as a pet, really got into pet play, being a kitten and everything. And then later on throughout my life, I started coming into my own. And so I would find my voice through bratting. And
Mm,
then I realized, I'm like, it's not so much that it isn't enough. It's more like I felt a very strong calling to step into the Dom role more recently. But if we're talking in regards to like my early sex life, it was a lot of ideation
mm.
and concepts and things that I wanted to try with people who I was exposing to the lifestyle. So they were ignorant, I was kind of ignorant, but it was a lot of just new energy, just
Yeah.
a lot of fucking around and finding out.
I love that your journey went from the sub to the dom because I do feel like that is a path for a lot of
Mhm.
people through submission, like finding your strength. Also, a lot of doms that I know are switches. I shouldn't say I haven't met anybody that's like a full blown dom, but it's like good doms make good doms because they know they can be in the sub's brain. You know what I
Well,
mean? They can.
yeah, I mean, it's all a psychological game, and I'm of the theory, don't dish out what you can't take.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I'm like,
I
why would you do it to somebody else if you wouldn't do that or experience that yourself? That's There's an imbalance of power there.
I think that to be a good dom, you also need to understand the art of surrendering.
And that's what that's why I do what I do. Is we have all of this chatter, all of this noise going on, telling us what to do, who to be
Mm,
like, and we have these roles that we have to play the rest of the time in our life. When we're in this container, I just want you to let all of that go and just
mm,
be. And it's hard. We cling on to our concepts of self and our concepts of what the outside world tells us, and sometimes we just want the world to shut the fuck up and just be.
mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. What you're talking about, the being able to just be and using BDSM as a modality for presence, dom space and subspace. I mean, that's just an altered state of consciousness, right?
Yep,
You're just putting yourself in
absolutely.
an altered state of consciousness. It's almost a form of meditation, right? To be able to tap in to this just existing, the nothingness, the presence of the moment.
Absolutely. And someone like myself who's neurodivergent, getting my brain to just relax it's a challenge. So I actually, part of the reason why I got into shibari was as a form of meditation. My rope is my favorite fidget toy. I'll sit back and I'll be at an event or something and I'll have a like wallflower moment. And I'm like, well, I have my rope, so I'll just start tying myself, and that attracts people in. And, ooh, I want to get tied, or can I see what you're doing? And all of a sudden I have a line of people wanting me to tie them up, and it's a grand old time. That's actually kind of how I spent my New Year's Eve. Was I was over at Mystic Manor, and I brought my rope for those exact reasons. And naturally, the conversation shifted where I was in a group of people. I mentioned my rope. The whole crew just turned around and is like, can you bring it? Can we get tied up? I'm like, yes, those are the words I wanted to hear. And it was a beautiful night because it was also, I got to awaken some
Mm.
people who had never tried it before. And that's
Mm.
something that I really like. I feel like that is my mission, is just to push people just a little bit outside of what they're used to, just explore the world at large.
I always think of bondage too. It's kind of like a weighted blanket of,
Yeah,
oh, it's like a comfort. Yeah.
chest compressions, like I do a chest harness, and there's like a lotus tie that I'll do around my hips and legs and just sit there and do my breath work. And it's that sensation is one thing. Coming out of it and feeling the release from the restriction is sends me to a whole nother place.
Oh my gosh, I need to come get tied by you. I'm like, this sounds
Yeah.
awesome. Well, here's the thing is I've been thinking about this too. I'm like, girl, you have to start eating your own dog food. Like I'll tell clients like, go see a dom or go do this, or I like know the benefits. I intellectually know the benefits. It's interesting. This is the year that I'm really leaning into the somatic piece of things.
Mhm.
I feel like my journey into BDSM was very much psychological because I did a lot of my domination online too. And I was very, like, I was a humiliatrix basically, right? I was very focused on humiliation. um,
Nice.
and which that's a mental game.
Interesting muscle to flex too, because even starting out in your dom journey, learning your level, like learning the limits and levels with the person you're playing with, and because you never want to go too far and you're like, I don't want to be mean, and then once you build that confidence and get to that place where you're like, no, this is what they are paying you for and what they actually want, and then you can have fun with it and call
It's
them
in-
a silly little bitch.
it's interesting because I feel like I personally, as in my own personal like sex life, enjoy being humiliated a little bit. And I think it's because I have such a big ego, I'm kind of like a on stage kind of person that
You
like
know
there's
what? I can definitely that definitely resonates a bit because I lifestyle switch pro dom. I'm like predominantly dominant these days just because in order for me to submit to someone, that is very sacred space to me, and I'm like it takes a very specific set of, just for my own reasoning, I'm very particular about who I submit to, so that's why I'm more dominating these days. But when I am in that subspace, as like strong and powerful and autonomous that I know that I am in the rest of my life, I like being objectified in in the play space, or like being like a plaything. It's
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
so wild
it's so
because if
yeah.
someone were to treat me like that in normal society, then I would say fuck you, guy, or I wouldn't take that. But it takes that trust, or that whatever it is in that moment, to just it just the scratch.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's really what BDSM is, right? It's play. You're
Yeah.
playing. You get to play a different role. You get to do a different thing than you usually do. That's what makes it fun.
And I think also, going back to what we were saying before, is as human beings, we have all of these feelings, and we have all of these emotions, all of these sensations, and we're very complex creatures, that we may feel one thing one day, feel another the other day. A lot of the things that I feel people come to BDSM or these play spaces for is to release feelings that don't feel right with them, or that they don't want to experience because there is guilt or shame around it, or but we're human, we have emotions, we have these feelings, we have these thoughts that maybe if we vocalize out loud to the wrong people, we could be judged for it. But this is a container, no judgment, just be yourself, and with a person who is facilitating you just releasing whatever it is that you need. Working in the space is a crucial part of my dharma, and part of how I work through my shadow work as well, because my family and my lineage has I come from religious trauma. My mom
Mhm.
left the Catholic Church. I was almost, did not actually, but I was almost baptized as a kid. It was a whole thing. Glad that I wasn't. But yeah, it kind of stemmed from this deep rooted religious trauma that turned into a kink space. I joked with my friends saying, I don't know if religion is my kink or kink is my religion. And that's kind of true to a little bit of an extent. I'm in this space and I'm referred to as Priestess Cinda because I want to get you to a place where you can confess, shed off whatever is making you feel uneasy or ick or guilty or shameful, and just let it go and give it to the shadows, give it to source. Just be free. Be free from your sins.
No, I know. And I really identify with that priestess energy too. My initiation was through a really intense spiritual awakening. It was a Kundalini awakening. In my Dharma or my path too, it's very much the eighth house. It's death, it's sex. I'm also a
Yeah,
death doula. It's death, it's sex. It's like all of the taboo shit. Like I can't not go towards it, you know? And like now I'm seeing how important it is right now for the collective to really face some of these darker parts
yeah,
of consciousness, right?
for
And
sure.
not dark, not in like bad or evil, dark as in like it's behind a veil. Like people haven't really been looking at it in the face.
Well, yeah, because we don't really, we fear what we don't understand. And the thing about the concept of sins is the bad things, or the your sins teach you a lot. You got to make mistakes. You got to give in to temptation or whatever to learn the necessary lessons for your development. Holding on to the aftermath of those lessons can be detrimental. And so putting it in the context of these things are meant to teach you necessary things instead of holding on to it and feeling guilty or shameful for doing the thing. Look at it from a perspective of how did this shape you now? It comes up one way or another in a lot of like healing spaces or like ceremony spaces that I've been in. There's a common phrase: if you're feeling it, you're healing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes with all of the ugly emotions that like I listed off before. I feel like I just keep riddling
Well,
them
the thing
off.
is, it always comes back. It's shame. It's always
Yeah,
shame. It's
it's
shame's the
always
thing.
shame. It's always shame. It's always guilt.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's that's why we have a shadow in the
Mm.
first place, is because there was shame involved.
Yeah, and I think integrating of the shadow is shedding those layers, but it is hard, especially when you come from a background of religious trauma where they teach you of, if you are not following this, you are a bad person. And
Well, like you were saying with sin, it's like the religion basically made sin synonymous with shame, when
mhm,
really that's not really what sin is. You have to think of sin more like you're forgetting who you are. You're operating outside of your divinity. Doesn't mean you're a
yeah.
bad person.
Yeah.
Doesn't.
Yeah, it's basically, I believe that the original sin is just ignorance. I was primarily in the submissive space for a while, and I do love being a submissive. I love shutting my brain off and just being taken care of or taking care of, because I part of my submission is I am a service of, and acts of service is one of, I think, one of my main love languages. So I do love that, but I was more called to internally, spiritually. The universe was screaming at me to step into Dom space, and I was scared to and put it off for so long because of my own experiences early in my kink life, and doing a lot of fucking around and finding out and having some very traumatic experiences. Let's pull the band-aid off. I was traumatized as hell. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say, what was the
like,
fucking around and finding out what happened?
well, I got into a dynamic with, there were a couple of people who definitely disrespected and pushed my boundaries and trauma responses, either fawn or freeze. My understanding of it, because I'm so young, is I was very impressionable and was like, and this being my first experience, like adult experiences in the lifestyle, I was just like, oh, this is what it is. And the really eye-opening part for me was when I was in a dynamic with someone, and it was one of the sessions that we had together. It didn't feel like it was for me. And what I mean by that was I was there, my body was present, but he had no regard for me as a human being, as a sub. As he just wanted some, he wanted to destroy something beautiful. And there were things that happened in that space that I did not consent to, that were forced upon me. So I think me stepping into this space is me reclaiming that and saying, never again will I allow that to happen to me, and I will not be that to another person. And this community has, oh my god, I'm going to get emotional.
Mm.
This community is so important to me, and is like the BDSM community is my family. That is my people, my tribe, and has taught me so much about who I am and how, like, where I fit in the rest of the world. And the reason why I had stepped into this Dom journey is because this is me reclaiming that. And I want people to have a safe, consensual, loving, and give power to the subs, because there's so much empowerment in it, and there's so much healing in surrender. And that I am very grateful for the experiences that I have had. I would not wish them on anybody else, and I do not care how this comes across. I'm just going to say it, but I'm grateful that it happened to me and not somebody else, because I have the experience to know what to look for in certain environments, and I also know, like, how to handle with care that kind of trauma for somebody who has gone through it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I resonate with that a lot. I think that it's the archetype of the wounded healer. It's like the atrocities that sometimes we go through really is the blueprint for our special healing magic, right?
Yeah. I've been through a lot of shit, but
Yeah.
I don't want the trauma to be the main character. Like,
Yeah, totally, totally. And I feel like this is so important because one of the things that I work with my clients, I have a lot of clients with early life trauma, and it's about like, how can we move forward from it? Like, how I think sometimes in talk
how can we change
therapy,
our
they want to just let's keep talking about the trauma. Let's keep talking about the trauma.
yeah,
Like, how can you release it from your body and move forward? And I really resonate with your story too, of being interested in submission and accidentally falling into the hands of a predator or into an
yeah,
abuser. For people that are submissive and people that come to my work too, I always say the path of the sub is to know thyself. It's like truly know yourself, know that you actually have all of the power.
yeah, you absolutely do. And I do my best to remind my subs of that, is you have the power here. You call the shots, and this is an energy exchange. I always say that sex work is energy work,
Mhm.
and it takes a lot of courage, a lot of strength, a lot of power to to be in submission and to trust someone with your your mind, your body, your spirit, your you. So submission, and like from the dom perspective, having someone's submission is truly a gift, because that's telling me that you trust me enough to hold this container for you to work through whatever it is that you need, and truly surrender.
Absolutely. And I also feel like when we're in the role of dom, or even in my coaching, right? I'm in this role where I'm embodying this divine feminine container of sorts, right? Where there's also this repatterning that's happening on the other end, right? Of where
Yeah.
someone can be vulnerable. And I've seen a lot of attachment trauma get healed in BDSM or even through coaching because you're building a safe, emotionally safe, vulnerable container. I've been thinking a lot about this in the idea of containment, right?
Yeah.
Of
Mhm.
like seeking out containment with a practitioner, right? That they're holding the space for you so that you can fully be who you are, and they're just there to watch you grow. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of people missed that in their early life, and it can be a really healing experience to just, yeah, be there with somebody that's holding the space. And this is where I would love to hear your transition to being a Dom, because the people that I'm working with right now that are on their Dom journey, there's so much shadow work you have to do because
Oh my
otherwise
goodness.
you don't want to be bringing stuff into the container with the sub, right? Like you're the one that's holding the
Absolutely.
space. There's a lot of stuff that needs to get cleared if you want to be a good Dom. So I would love to hear about your transition and like what came up for you.
Yeah, no, you bring up a really good point about the journey of the sub being know thyself. And first stepping, the reason why I didn't tap into that like Dom space for the longest time was because of my experience of I don't want to traumatize my subs. I don't want to have dom ego where I think I'm better than everybody and hot shit and I like just get power hungry. I didn't want to be the person to re-traumatize folks, so it was something that I was very hyper aware of. And I've had many conversations with my mom and with other doms and like people in my life, and they're like, well, if you're so anxious and worried about that, I think you're doing pretty okay because you're aware enough about it to keep yourself in check. But I'm also really grateful and appreciative that I have such incredible people in my life and my mentors like um, Mr. Cyan and people at Sanctuary and people in the kink community and the rest of my life. I'm grateful for the abundance of resources that I have access to. I was having this energy exchange with one of my mentors, Inka, and she was talking to me like we were just having this deep, intense moment. And she was just like, you're free. Fuck everybody else. You know you. And it was just one of those very impactful moments for me because she's someone who I admired for so long, who I finally got to work with closely. And I'm just realizing I'm really grateful for the fact that the people that I admire and look up to, I'm actually and I'm inspired by, I get to work with and learn from. So I'm just like having that realization. Wow.
Well, that's awesome.
This is someone who I have high respect of and high regard telling me like you are on the right path, keep going is so good. But there's always that little anxiety monster that's I don't want to traumatize myself. That makes me just like extra aware of it. I just want
Yeah.
to I just want to respect them and love them and keep them safe because I know what it's like to.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when I was a baby Dom, like I probably I probably hurt more people than I helped because when I started, it came from a place of honestly powerlessness. And this is why I was
Mhm.
drawn to doing Dom work. And only through that work did I have these big revelations around what BDSM actually was and the healing powers that it had. Because through the work, I ended up getting really connected to some of my clients. I became very emotionally invested in them. And that's when I learned, like, oh, some of these things that we're doing, some of these role plays that we're doing is actually like repatterning a trauma that they had. Like,
Yeah.
we are working through some deep level shit of what's going on in their unconscious mind. And I've always been my special interest has always been psychology. So I
Yep.
was super interested, right? All of the different fantasies, I was like, okay, we're going to figure out how to play this one or play that one. I was like really
Mhm.
into the acting piece of it. This is like so fun. But then it's such a metaphor for how disconnected we are from the feminine aspect of God. And I talk about this a lot of like, I think about things like a giantess fetish, for example, right? It's like fear of the almighty consuming feminine or whatever that's
Yeah.
coming out in a kink. And when you start looking at different fantasies through a symbolic lens, it tells you a lot more of what's going on in that person's unconscious or even the collective psyche.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% agree. Part of what I do is like it's not just impact, it's not just being of the body, it's a conversation too, constantly checking in, keeping like staying in the headspace or staying dropped in is a crucial part because that allows you to dig a little deeper and work through those different things. And so part of what I like to do in play is not necessarily have a conversation, but more so get in their heads before I even start to engage it. The play starts when I am messing with your head because even as myself, I'm a sapiosexual. I'm like, you got to fuck my brain before you can fuck my body.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
and so we don't have to jump immediately into the physical, you know, you can drop into the headspace first and just get yourself prepared before really like ramping into the play and then staying engaged and present with your sub in that dynamic or in that session. Like engagement and presence, once it's on, I'm locked in.
Yes, presence has been a big theme in general. And the
Yeah.
topics that have been coming up, what's going on with my collective of people. It's like
Mhm.
this idea of how can we be more present? How can we be more present
Yeah.
in our bodies? And it's such a
That's why
basic
a lot of folks
concept.
I noticed are on their sobriety journey as well. And
Mm,
because of the sense of just like not numbing yourself to life anymore and just, being here now.
yeah, that's been a big journey for even me personally because I look at it that I had so much early life trauma
Yeah.
that my and throw in whatever the that's why I always think of like was the neurodivergency from the trauma, is it, was I born with it, I'm
No,
not really sure, but like my
it's
brain
crazy.
my brain and my nervous system, like my brain works differently, my nervous system is more sensitive, and I think I'm just coming to terms with that so many years down the road where I'm like, okay, you always try to make these sweeping level changes. And then it's like, stop trying to live in chaos, be slow about things, And it's like,
Mhm.
okay, if that when you're going through a transition that you're going to want to self soothe, just choose your soothing mechanism consciously, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
understand and be okay with it. But I think that when it came down to that, I was always very all or nothing. I was either like really healthy and doing cryotherapy every day, or I was like drinking wine every night and
Yeah.
like binging Netflix or whatever. And I feel like I lived my life like that for years. And then it
Yeah.
was kind of like, all right, how can I just stay more present all the time instead of going into this hyper micromanagement to ignoring
Yeah, for
the
sure. And
body?
I definitely that resonates with me a lot, especially where I'm at now, just trying to be more present in my life. And I'm still like healing from a lot of stuff. I mean, we're always healing, but
Always.
I've had compounded grief that I haven't processed in a while. And now that I am just like on my own, I'm trying not to give myself too much shit because I'm like, remember, your body goes through seasons. Just give yourself what you need. Don't guilt yourself about falling off, and just like truly accepting where I'm at in the present moment definitely helps and gives me more room to make more informed decisions. Because it's one thing to, because I get in those micromanagey folk, I get in these moments where I'm battling between what I know I want to do and should be doing and the like the things that I should be doing and that I want to do that will help me. And then there's the old patterns that served me before but are starting to hold me back. So it's
Yeah, I think
taking a moment to slow down and just be is that that's the challenge.
That is the challenge. And I do think for people that are neurodivergent, for people that have had any kind of trauma,
Hmm.
this being in the body can be incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
And I think that this is why I feel like it was a final frontier for me where it was like, okay, you can intellectually process your feelings in the mind, or you can actually, I think it was like a, this like, oh, wow, like, no, feelings is actually like feeling in your body. I was like, oh, yeah, I have feelings
You
going through my head, but
you
like,
have concepts of feeling.
I,
You have
I
ideas
have
of feeling.
I have concepts of a feeling. And I had like horrible, like for a long time in my life, these swings in emotional dysregulation, right?
Yep.
And
Been there, buddy.
you know what? And I'm not perfect still, but I'm noticing that the pendulum swing is getting shorter as
Yeah.
time goes on. And who knows? Who knows how long I'll be doing this? And this is like one of those things where are we going to be fully ever? No, we're never going to be fully
No.
healed. Our nervous system is never going to be perfect. Like we're just constantly just being present and being with ourselves and noticing what's going on. And like that's the work.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I would love to talk about neurodivergence and also BDSM and neurodivergence. I don't know. I just feel like this is a good topic. I
Yes.
think this is just a good topic that I love bringing to the forefront because I feel like I have a lot of people that come to me that are, I feel like
There's
almost all of my clients are neurodivergent actually, but maybe there's a
there's
couple that
got to
aren't.
be
But
some kind of link between. I know that there is, but
no, there
there's
actually is. There
a
actually
link
is.
between
I've looked,
autism and BDSM
yeah, there's a
because
link.
myself and so many people are I know we're all autistic or ADHD or a combo of the both.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and it's I think it's I need clear instructions and I need clear, concise communication and instructions of what we're going to do, what the rules are, and what our roles are, and it's just
So,
it stimulates that little that part in our brain.
well, yeah, and there's also, I mean, there's also the sensory aspect to it, right? There's like
Yeah.
sensory stuff going on. There's, yeah, the clear and concise communication around the rules. But I think also, too, here's another thing that I realize as someone who has always felt like an alien and I
Mhm.
always had to like mask and be like, okay, like I like my whole life, this has been my life lesson of trying to fit in and then burning out, trying to fit in and then burning out, trying to
Yeah,
fit in where people don't even like me, burning out. Like I that was like literally what I
I
did my
feel
whole
that.
life.
Absolutely.
So it's this, I think that also too, BDSM is fun for people that like constantly have to like perform or put on a mask for society where you can like
Yeah.
really rip that mask off and just be someone else. And that's like
That is
it's good for the soul.
that is literally my life's work. That is my purpose and what I'm trying to do in this space. And that just like because I like transparency and authenticity is so important to me and even for myself. I know I it's still a process because we're still to a certain extent I've got some deep rooted people pleaser shit, especially like you were saying from trying to mask and fit in or in my case mirror and crash out. But what I love doing in these spaces is purpose of what I do is I want you to feel safe and I want you to the goal is for you to feel free enough and safe enough to unmask and just be all of you.
Mm.
That is my goal, that is my intention, that is the purpose behind what I do is to just let it go, be your full crazy wild weird autistic self, just because that's who we were meant to be, that's who we're supposed to be. And finding a like being in a space where you can go back to that or find that again is and then it's an honor and a privilege from my end to be able to witness it because it shows that I'm capable of doing it myself even though I am fulfilling this role for this person. It's still reflecting back at me that it is possible.
Yeah, I have this observation that I've noticed. Essentially, what I've seen is that people that are a little neurospicy, they have less of a fixed identity, I think, is like the word I'm looking for, where I think a lot of times in society, like people have very strong egos and they're very into this is
Mhm.
who I am. I am a woman. I am a corporate professional. They have their little boxes and they have their little labels. And I think that that comes unnatural for people that are a little neurospicy. So we spend our whole lives trying to like learn all the boxes and like learn all the labels and try to fit into one of them when
Yeah, when
really
in reality, we're all shapeshifters.
yes,
We
yes, yes,
really
yes.
are.
Yeah, totally. And I think that was like one of my biggest as a neurodivergent person aha moments was like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm not supposed to fit in. Or I
Yeah.
can fit in anywhere, but I have the choice of like when I want to pop on the mask or pop off the mask and being able to do it with that kind of freedom and fun makes it a
Yeah.
lot less exhausting.
Yeah, and I think also that's why I lean more towards spirituality in my own practice rather than organized religion because also one, I don't like being told what to do unless I'm in a dynamic where I like being told what to do. Even still, that's in play, not in life. And yeah, I've always been that kid where like from as early as I can remember is I've always just wanted to do my own thing. And
Mm,
you'd set some rules or tell me not to do something and I was the kid asking why a million times because I always like if it didn't make sense to me, I'm not going to do it.
mm-hmm. Yep.
And
Yeah.
also part of the reason why like early on in my life when I asked my mom all of these questions like the when we had the sex talk it wasn't really an official talk, it was like I'd randomly have a question and she'd answer. I think the first time I learned about sex is I asked her what a condom was and she told me. And so that kind of snowballed into where I'm at now, which is it's that curiosity to new information to just going off and exploring.
That's another thing I've noticed about neurodivergent people that are like truly on their path is
Mhm.
that the shape shifting, like the evolution of one's identity is like it's meant to
Yeah.
continuously go. Follow those breadcrumbs. Like go towards the where your curiosity is taking you and it's going to take you to a new path. And that's also been like part of my personal work is like how can I easily let go of this old version? How can I easily let go of this old identity and move into this new space? Just kind of like how you were moving from your submissive role into the Dom role. That takes a
Yeah.
lot of identity updating.
It really does. And you know what? It's not an overnight process at all. And it's not
No.
linear at all either. I mean, I have this horrible habit of I'll make these big, bold claims or these big limitations on myself and just put these rules on myself. That's it's usually after like when I did drink, I'll be like, okay, I'm never drinking again. And then I'd be like, well, I just have a glass of wine. Or like now I'm like, I'm never smoking weed again. And so I'm like, okay, this is actually medicine and is helping me. I'm just not going to abuse it. So it's being honest with myself of, okay, this is a goal that you want to make. Like you don't need to drop everything and become this new person overnight. It takes time. And also your body needs to process all of it. Your body and your brain needs to process all of this new information that you're just throwing at it right now.
Oh my gosh, girl. This is like the all or nothing swinging, going back to the pendulum, the all or nothing swinging was the bane of my existence. And again, it was like understanding the body part of it. It's like your nervous
Yes.
system needs to adjust to your changes. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to go do something different and it's going to be fine. And I think that was the thing too. Even when I was starting my business, I had these like really unrealistic goals where I was like, I'm going to replace my fucking tech income in a year
Yeah.
doing coaching or whatever, right? That
Right.
was like so unrealistic because I needed to like restart my identity and who I was and all of this stuff. And it was, and this is like one of the things where I was like, okay, like slow and steady wins the race. That is your mantra. Small
Hmm.
incremental changes.
Yeah.
even looking into 2025, I was like looking at things like my business goals or my money goals, all this stuff. And
Mhm.
I used to have such a toxic relationship with goals, like where I would be
Yeah,
like, oh, like I would overfocus. I was very masculine in the way that I did things. And I was like, you know
right.
what? I'm only looking for an incremental increase this year that's not going to burn me out. I'm not doing any
Yeah,
extra. I know the max amount of sessions I can do a week. I'm not going to overachieve. And that
yeah.
was the first time I've made a goal that was like I'm making a year of essentially no real goals. It's just kind of like, hey, listen to your body and like do your best.
Oh my goodness, remind me like when we're done, I need to show you my vision board because it's totally in line with what you're talking about. It's
Oh
got like
yes.
it says breathe. It's got like an oil painting of a lady lounging. It's got like a girl in a bubble bath. I'm like, because I just turned 29 today.
Ah,
It's the last year of my 20s, so I just want to soak up and savor every single moment because I'm not going to be in my 20s after this year. Like,
yes.
and I just want to really just savor all of that. And then going back to what you were saying about rushing through the process and being in that masculine, do the thing, go and make these big bold changes. Like conceptually, I understood slowing down and that it's important, but I couldn't grasp it because I needed to understand it in a way that would that would intrigue me, make me want to do it. So because I'm a burlesque entertainer as well, I am looking at it from as a form of I'm seducing life. It's a slow burn, it's a seduction, it's a strip tease. So really it's a journey, not a race. So really like moving with it instead of just rushing through it and really finding my flow has been where I'm at because it feels more aligned and more embodied and you start to it's at least from my experience it becomes a more erotic way of living without being super sexual and it's
Hell yeah.
still you get excited about life even slowing down you get excited about life again and it's like feeding you.
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's just from
yes.
my experience.
No, that's delicious the way that you said that. But it feels so correct. When my grandmother died in November, I was on social media the least. I
Mhm.
wasn't doing anything. I was incredibly present in my emotions. And it was my best financial month of the year. And it made me sit and go, wait a second. The months that you feel like you had to work really hard, like you didn't get the results that you wanted, and the months that you really just like honored yourself
Yeah,
was like the most magnetic you were. And
because that feminine energy is we are like we're that's receiving energy.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And again, like you said, like I also had like concepts of an idea of what it meant to be in flow or what, but it
If
was
you were all in your head and not in your body. Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was like, you know what? You've burnt out like multiple times in like other things that you were doing in life. And now you're building a new business and you can build it in a way that's not going to burn you out. So, like, why don't you do that instead of go and use the same formula and apply it now to this business that you're doing? And yeah, even when I was doing my dominatrix business,
Mhm.
it was like I was very regimented, you know. I was like, okay, you're
Yeah.
gonna do X amount of hours a day. And yeah, so I'm really excited to see what flow brings me in 2025. But it was this understanding of like, even when you have lots of things happen or you get like a big influx of
Sometimes I do, I'm not gonna lie, I love getting swept up in the chaotic whirlwind of life
I
when things
know.
are like, okay, go, go, go. I'm like, yes, take me, I'm yours. But so we've had so much of that that I'm really looking forward to and excited for 2025 to be a very seductive slow burn. That's my
Yes.
intention.
Well, also too though, I think it's like you said earlier about your body being in seasons, and I think sometimes it's okay when
Mhm.
we get really lit up by something and we want to like put a bunch of action into it, right? But
Yeah.
it's like understanding the balance of that and really leaning into because that's the thing when you're in flow, you can
Mhm.
actually take a lot of action and have it feel super easy.
Yeah. Oh,
Where it's
absolutely.
not
Because it just
forced, you
comes
know.
naturally to you. It doesn't feel like work. It just feels like you doing your thing.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I've been really trying to actively practice that just within the last few weeks because I was like, okay, like really sitting with something like, am I
Yeah.
doing this because I really want to do it? Or am I doing it because it's like on my to-do list and I need to
Yeah.
check this box off right now. So
And the thing about ADHD too is like we need to be stimulated. We're not going to do something if it's not fun, or we don't want to do something if it's not fun. Like it needs to be
mm.
engaging and stimulating.
Totally. Yes. Well, also too, I feel like my ADHD, the symptoms aren't as intense when I'm taking care of myself, like when I'm getting in healthy
Mm-hmm.
movement every day or
Yeah.
nourishing my body, like when I'm actually in a state of taking care of
Breathe,
myself.
drink water.
Yeah, drinking water as I'm just drinking like
I
coffee,
know.
but
I've got a hibiscus, rose hip, and dragon fruit tea right now. It's cold,
oh,
but it's still good.
that sounds good. I want to ask a couple questions before we go. Okay, who is your ideal client that comes into your dungeon?
I just, I think that's so hard to say. I feel like they're they're all special in their own way. No, I'm just kidding.
Or your ideal sub, yeah.
My ideal sub, honestly, I do love the ones who don't know what they want and want to explore and are curious, but have a general idea because you can open their minds a bit more and play a bit more and get them curious, and then that sends them down to a rabbit hole of wow, self exploration. Sorry, Freudian slip.
I love it.
But self exploration is what I meant to say. um, so
So
I
it's
would
the
say yeah,
abbreviation, sex, yeah.
yeah, sex. So self exploration. I also do love the ones who know what they want and it's a specific thing that I enjoy doing.
What would you say to somebody who is perhaps interested in a journey into BDSM or seeing a professional dominatrix, but they are totally new but very curious, maybe like that first category of your ideal kind of submissive? What would you say to them on how they could start their journey into this?
Yeah. Well, I would start with asking what do they want to feel like in the space? What sensations, whether physical, mental, emotional, what do they want to feel and what do they want to experience in the space? I would also ask what do they want to let go of and release in this space. And I would also ask if there is something that they're they're nervous about or on the fence about but are curious to try or are keeping an open mind about. So just kind of get testing the waters, also understanding like where their experience level is at.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And if somebody was interested in working with you, how do they get in touch with you? How would they go about that?
So I am freelance, so you can connect with me on Instagram. My kink specific Instagram is priestess.of.sin. So priestess of sin. I am at Sanctuary Studios in Los Angeles and I travel for the right client. Yeah, I am on FetLife, as I don't remember if my name on FetLife is Cinda fucking Star or if it's Priestess Cinda. I'm pretty sure it's Cinda fucking Star. But but yeah, I'm on FetLife, I'm on Instagram. All of the other things that I do other aside from kink is under Cinda fucking Star.
Okay, great. I'll make sure that we put all those links in the show notes too. And thank you so much for being here and happy birthday.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. You're delightful and just thank you for everything.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, talk to you
Take
later.
care. Bye.
You too. Bye bye.